We are just chatting away here, and we're so excited to introduce Nichole Nicholas, Seat Technical Lead at General Motors. She'll be talking about General Motors and Auros past, present, and future. And remember, keep the comments and questions going. I know Nichole was gracing us with many comments and questions yesterday, so let's do the same for her today. Take it away, Nichole.
Well, hello, everyone. I have enjoyed all the presentations, and you'll see some familiar trends and topics here from a previous presentation that was given. So I'm Nichole Nicholas, and I'm a Seat Technical Lead at General Motors, and I'm just going to go through the past 10 years at General Motors, so the past, the present, and the future. So first, introduction of myself, the implementation of Auros from the past 10 years. A case study, I'll go into specifics about the Seat group and how we have really embraced the system, the software, the knowledge-aware process, and then what we're going to go do in the future. And then we'll go into some question and answers. So, you've seen this chart a couple times, the knowledge-aware maturity model. And when we first started, we were basically down here in this section of level 0 and level 1. And I can see there's a little bit of a lag, so I'm going to talk a little bit slower. We did have a knowledge management system. It was called TechMem, and it basically was just a database that housed our knowledge and that we could see the information, we could go find it, but it wasn't really usable. So, oops, use this one. So back in 2010, we started transitioning from TechMem into E2KS at the time. Now it's called Auros, and all you guys know it as that, to store our lessons learned and our best practices along with some design guidelines. So we had some KPAC value tables that were used to establish some KBE rules within NX at that time. The connector was in its infancy, let's say, but we hadn't really used it. In 2012, we created a pilot within our interior S&T using the assessments portion of Auros to do our peer reviews, which are throughout the development cycle for our components or our systems. In 2015, we started to introduce the issues within limited applications throughout the, just in a few areas within the company. Some were in the studio area, they're the design, creative design area, and some of them were in some other areas, just really random usage. And then in 2016, those connectors that I talked about for the KBE rules, they started implementing them with the introduction of our parameter manager and the linkage between NX and Auros. And then in 2017, we rolled out Closedloop Learning through issues and manufacturing issues through issues, and then team boards for peer reviews across the vehicle engineering organization. So you can sort of see that progression, which was similar to what Jeff had shown previously in Navistar. It was this progression into all of the different let's say, sections and applications within Auros. So I just wanted to touch on the parameter manager. I guess we've seen a couple things throughout the presentation so far. It's basically taking those rule managers, the value tables that are within the KPACs and linking them directly to parameters within NX. And we collect them within an assessment, and the assessment can go in and either check math, or we can individually take them. So there's a whole bunch of different applications that you can use with the parameter manager. And we did have a presentation a couple years ago where we talked about this, but you've seen a little bit about it. I just wanted to touch base a little bit that I think this is one of the coolest things to see that you can use Auros to drive or to check your design within the CAD tool itself. Throughout those 10 years, we've been able to transition from other systems into Auros. So this is just a list, and it's a partial list of some of the things that we've been able to take from another system, another software or application and have moved them into Auros. So those are our interface control documents, info book, which is supplier design guidelines, some engineering-driven process controls, manufacturing requirements, preventing repeat defects, lessons learned, design for Six Sigma, component readiness reviews, design standard works, for the NX, and then knowledge-based engineering. So these are just a few of them that we have pushed into Auros in the last few years. So basically, we've been, since that 2010 inception in our TechMem days, we have basically started to move towards the maturity, the extended strategic area of this chart. We're not quite there, but we are moving that way and implementing a lot of these different things that we've talked about along the way. So a lot of numbers have been tossed around so far in some presentations. So here's the information here at GM. So since its introduction in 2010, where we basically just use KPACs and best practices, we've transitioned all of those previous areas and topics into Auros. So since 2010, we've had an 800% increase in the number of KPACs. We've had a 230% increase in active users. We've decommissioned 9 systems to move to Auros, and this would be from like Excel or SharePoint or some other kind of software base. And we have over 30 product and manufacturing workflows. So that's been our journey basically in the last 10 years. So the next thing that I want to go into is really the case study. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on seats. And this is our seat story. So on the left-hand side, you sort of see we follow that same progression I just went through, but within the seat space, we really embraced it a little bit earlier than the rest of the organization. So in 2010, we started with just KPACs and best practices. We had about 40 best practices at that time. And then in 2012, like I've talked about, we started that peer review process within the assessment group. And so we had some very simple best practices and some questions. And so we sort of collected those to ask within a peer review. And that was about 50 of them. And then in 2014, we really decided to really capture this knowledge software and really start our journey in that knowledge maturity model. And we started to improve those KPACs with more detail. And we started creating the assessments and making sure that they were figuring out the right KPACs to ask for at that time in the development process. We added more, I'm going to say, rigor to the peer review process, where we wanted to document adherence to the KPACs, and then we increased our KPACs to 100. And in 2016, we actually took our peer review process and we reduced it down. Now, I'm going to go back a little bit. In 2010, when we did peer reviews, was basically, and before, it was basically a PowerPoint presentation that was sort of set by a template, but you could sort of put in there what you wanted and take away what you wanted. And when we did a peer review that way, we could average anywhere between 6 hours to 30 hours for a peer review. In 2016, we tried to reduce that time for the peer review. So we had a process set up where we preload the peer review about a week ahead of time. The team that reviews and basically controls the peer review process started to pre-review the information a couple days ahead, and it has become more efficient and effective. And now those peer reviews I just said take between 6 to 30 hours or 8 to 30 hours are now taking maybe a maximum of 4 hours. Typically, we can get it done in about 2. So we've been able to really make that time a lot more efficient. And we're now, then in 2016, we were up to about 150 best practices. And if you read ahead, you can see today, Seating is consistently updating our knowledge. We're always adding new KPACs or actually updating existing ones. When there is feedback from a user or a group that says maybe they misunderstood it or they misinterpret it, the team goes in and changes it, or we adopt something else. We create new KPACs when there's a new learning. So In our current space of just seats, just that little group within seats, not the whole of GM, but just in seats, we have 10 COPs, and we have about 290 active KPACs with about 75 work in progresses. We've completed or have active 400 assessments. We have about 80 closed loop learning issues, and we have about 30 active team boards. And then we just did do like a little bit of an experiment with one of the programs where we actually assigned line items within the assessment to a supplier, and they completed that assessment through Auros portal to complete and were participated in the peer reviews. So that worked really well and seamlessly. They were able to review the KPACs, ask questions. We actually got some feedback from our suppliers at that time that there was some discrepancies between some information in the KPAC, and they were updated based on that feedback. So that worked really well. And so we're basically delivering the right knowledge to the DRE at the right time during the product and the component development cycle. And I think Jeff has talked about that, and we've talked about that a lot within the space of what Auros can deliver and make the right package for the DRE or the user at the time and place in the development cycle. So through this is what our warranty trend has been. And this question comes up, I think, every year, and I think this is my 6th year of attending this conference. And the question is always, but do you see the benefit? Do you see the warranty? And I think I have stated this a few times, but this is actually our seat warranty data, as you can see, based from 2014 till today. So you can see our trend is down. And then another thing is we also have JD Power IQS scores. And if you can see that the orange line here in the chart is seats in memory and restraints. They're all sort of grouped together. But when we separate out seats itself, that's the blue line, and you can see that in the latest JD Power IQS scores, the General Motors seating group or General Motors seating in the industry is #1. And we are very proud of that. And I'm sure that our management would have had a big celebration if we were in the building. But we all know that we are working from home, so we did not get a great big celebration, just a big pat on the back through a virtual session. So even though that Auros is not our only initiative within seats since 2010, it has been a major contributor to us reducing that warranty, reducing repeat defects, and minimizing customer-facing issues. So we are very proud of our continued improvement in the quality of our seats. And like I said, our team in our seating space has really embraced and enabled this software to really take hold and really help us in our development process. So going into the future, we do have some future applications that will be implemented within the next short time, maybe the next 6 months to a year. We have some component readiness reviews, which would be basically ensuring that our components have been basically produced through the development with rigor, let's say, or certain questions that are more of a, I'm going to say, a program management or something that maybe we would have forgotten, maintaining that we need to get this done or it affects downstream users. Some functional readiness reviews, and that's more from a systems-based and the functions of the vehicle as a whole. We're going to work through reporting and workflows through Power BI for the peer reviews and some data logistics and things like that based on the assessments and the team boards. And then supplier readiness reviews, which is a second half to that component readiness reviews, which is the same kind of rigor, but in our suppliers in preparing for launch. And then also starting to get more of that supplier remote involvement in assessments and or issues through that Auros portal. So we're really excited about more stuff going into Auros, and I think it really does streamline the whole knowledge delivery and makes it much easier for the end user. So, and I don't know if it switched, but So anytime I'm done, any questions?
Yeah. So thank you, Nichole. Let's get the comments and questions going. If you do have them, please type them in the chat window on your screen. All right. We've got one that just popped up. Gerald says, thank you, first of all, and congrats on the quality results. He's asking, roughly how many total KPACs do you have at GM? Not just seats. And how long did it take GM to populate the system roughly? And how is Auros administered within GM? How many tech resources?
So the first thing that I'll talk about is how many total KPACs. So that one, I wrote that down. So that increase in the 800% is back in 2010, we had about 5,700 KPACs within GM. And as of, actually it was just a couple weeks ago, we have about 45,000 KPACs. The second part of the question has gone off my screen, so let me just.
You want me to say it again, or?
No, yeah, no, I got it. So, yeah, I think once again, as we get more systems onboarded into Auros, it's people are either adding them manually or uploading through Excel, which we can do. We have, I don't know if a lot of our groups have done that document ingestion, or I don't remember what it was exactly called, but we have done full COPs of 150 through Excel, and that takes, I don't know, a couple hours of work. But the main part is a lot of times we're not converting something, we're actually creating something. So I think the bulk of the time is creating the KPACs and what do you want to put in there and what do you want to learn. Like whenever I meet with someone to create a new COP, I always ask, what do you want to learn out of what you're trying to do? What do you want to get out of it? And so that's basically takes the bulk of the time, and it takes probably a couple hours in developing it. If we have something that's established, it doesn't usually take that long, but we pretty much do the implementation and creation through Excel. And then how many tech resources? Now, I might have to ask Wendy or Christine to ask this one, because we do have a couple administrators that are over the whole program, and they deal with different aspects of the system. So we have an administrator for the team boards, we have an administrator for the issues in closed-loop learning, we have another for issues in manufacturing, and then regular issues, and then the overall admin. So we probably have 5 or 6 overall for General Motors. And then within each SMT, we have like an SME. So I'm an SME for our interior group. And there's a few of those throughout the corporation within the SMTs or different areas. We have like a group, the KBE guys, we have 2 of them that deal with the value tables and that connection. So it's not like a huge group, because we don't work necessarily, like I as an SME don't work for the system. I am sort of like a filter up to the main team, let's say. So I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thanks. So Anthony says, first of all, good stuff. And can you give a general example of a closed loop learning?
A closed loop learning might be something that we get some kind of feedback, like we do a lessons learned peer review, or actually throughout the whole process we usually have a lessons learned. So if we learn something, like say I have a KPAC that says use material ABC, and I used material ABC, and ABC did not get the results that I wanted. Maybe we said ABC was going to be used because it would reduce squeaks or rattles or something like that. And then we used it and it didn't. So that would be a closed loop learning that we'd say, what, ABC didn't work, what DEF did. So we think you should probably add that or replace it with that material that you had originally said. So that's sort of like a closed loop learning, and that's sort of like a really general thing. But it could also be that we used a clearance and we said use 5 millimeters clearance. We still had an issue because we had something running into something, so it didn't work. So we need to increase that to 10. Or maybe it was something that we found that was like a really major safety issue, and that would also be the same thing. We just feed that back in. and update a KPAC or create a new KPAC if we didn't have one. So that's sort of like, it could be anything. And that's sort of the beauty of Auros. It can be anything.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. So Dean is wondering, what criteria did GM use for creating, defining COPs and team boards?
For the COPs, it's typically based on, we started with just the commodities. So we started with like, I'm going to use interior as an example because we have our interior space, and within interiors, we have seats, we have IPs, we have consoles, we have carpet, we have overhead, we have door trim. And so each one of those groups got their own COP. Now, when we create new COPs, it's typically because we want different attributes or a different assessment associated with that group of knowledge. So within the COP, you have to have consistent attributes. And I don't think we have not talked about attributes so far within the KPACs, but they are a lot of people call them the metadata. It's the searchable, sortable, filterable data within the KPAC that you can collect all of the knowledge together within your sets. And so you want to have those attributes sort of the same. And that's what that question is what do you want to do with the data and how do you want to use it? And so that's how you would create your COPs, is how would you want to group it and what kind of different information would you be looking for? So in our space, some of our groups have set attributes based on maybe a subset of that component. Let's use door trim for example. Maybe they have door trim, they might have it for, okay, this is what you want to do with an armrest, and this is what you're going to do with the door pocket, and this is what you want to do with a handle or something. So you could put an attribute for what the handle wants to be, the armrest, and the pocket. So you can sort of collect the data together and make a knowledge set for that particular part. Same thing with like hard trim or something like that. But those kind of attributes wouldn't work for seats, so we wouldn't want to really combine them. So those are the kinds of things that you'd want to think about. And then who is the user, the overall authors and admins of that COP? That would have some effect as well.
Okay.
Hope that answers. Oh, and then team boards, you can decide that by how you want to collect the assessments, because we have it by vehicle program. But you could also do other things. It's just depending on how you want to collect the information into one little space to show those, I think Jeff called it Kanban boards, so that you can see the data and collect it in the right way. So it's just like, what attribute do you want to use to collect? So I hope that answers that question.
Okay, and Kim is a business improvement leader asking, how did you provide training to your team?
So in our space, we did a lot of training through lunch and learns, and then a lot of one-on-one training. From the aspect of the usage of Auros, I think the user and how to navigate through the system, it's very simple. You just click buttons and all that kind of stuff, and you really can't do anything. On the opposite side, when you're actually an author to a KPAC, it's a little bit more difficult. So when I have to tell the teams what to do because we're going to implement a new process or whatever, I usually pull those authors together. It's a smaller group. So we'll pull the authors together and we'll work through as a group, sort of like a one-on-one kind of basis. And it's more of I'm going to say it's an organic kind of training for the authors. But for the users, it's usually pretty simple. And I find that a lot of people, there's a couple people that have shown me some new trick or they've discovered, and I'm like, wow. So from a user standpoint, the DRE, they tend to have, it seems to be pretty simple for them. It's just a little bit more difficult on the authorship side. So one-on-one and basically discovery is not the best way to discover what Auros can or can't do, but that's typically how they've done it. But lunch and learns, and we do have quite a few training packets within our space, that the teams can use. Hope that answers that.
Great. Now we have just over 5 minutes and a lot of questions, so we'll try to get to as many as we can. Can you speak to how you connect best practices to product design?
I think I'm going to ask that, or I'm going to ask it this way, like the best practices that we create, and I'm going to say that there's best practices, there's design guidelines, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can use in KPACs. So when we look at product design, we look at it in a couple different buckets. And so when I talked about the peer reviews, the first part of product design might be packaging. So we have packaging criteria. And when I talk about like clearance before, it's going to be like size, shape, clearance, potentially. There could also be some strategy within there. You want to go and you want to use your given BOM solutions or current product. So you might have information about what currently is available, and you can put that into like your assessment, right? So maybe at that first part, your product design best practices are going to be related to packaging. And then the next space might be more about the detail of the design itself, and maybe just a check on packaging, make sure that it's still the same and it's working. So that delivering the best practices, the guidelines, the information, the knowledge at the given time, you try to figure out what is the most important things. And like we talked about lessons learned that came back, those lessons learned come back from the previous program and we implement them so that the next program has them. It's this continual loop of information that feeds back. And so that when we found a program on the program that just launched, hopefully that's now back into the new program that we're starting. So they're going to check that during packaging, or they're going to check that at that next design detail. So it's sort of an organic kind of development. And you saw our progression in seats. We started with 40 best practices, and basically those were created to say what not to do. We had an issue. We wrote down what not to do in the future. And those, like I said, have progressed to about 290 because we've been actively adding based on that feedback and the knowledge that was captured during launches, feeding back into next programs. Hope that answers that.
Okay. Now, how did GM handle pushback from organizational inertia, especially with competing products, SharePoint, Checkmate, DFM Pro, et cetera?
And I think we still have a little pushback, and I almost want to go back to that maturity model because in some spaces, we still are in the very, very bottom of the corner, the lagging and developing. And then in other spaces, they've really progressed and they've moved up to the, like I said, the more of the mature spaces. So I think in one that I can speak to is it's a group that all of their best practices and stuff, they have checklists. It's Word documents, it's Excel files, and we're like, nope, we're not going to use it. We have a SharePoint. And we have one program, the ICDs are interface control documents. It started in SharePoint, and it has moved to Auros because it's just easier. It's much more controllable. It's controlled by the sort of like the COP authors and admins. It's not as an overall, person that you have to go ask permission. It's not IT that you have to go ask permission to change something. So I think once the users and the people that are sort of pushing back see the benefits of it, the read across potential, the documentation, the ability to sort of change on the fly, add things without going to ask for an IT project, they start going, maybe that is something that we want to look at. So then they'll start dipping their toe in it, So that group that had everything in Word and Excel and everything, they are just dipping their toe now. They're going to start implementing in one aspect. But their peer reviews and everything, they still haven't moved it, but they're progressing. We're getting them closer to. But as more people start seeing and being using the system in different aspects, like the ICDs and manufacturing requirements and things like that, they start seeing that benefit. So I think it's just really, I think the biggest one is to demonstrate what the capability of the software does.
Okay. And then what do you think about if one of your suppliers is using Auros? Does it really benefit you, or does it do not really anything different for you?
So to answer that question, I don't know if any of our the suppliers that I interface use Auros. However, the supplier that I am directly interfacing is using Auros through the Auros portal. And I think it has been very beneficial for the team. enabling them to see the best practice and to work directly in the assessment. So I think that has been actually a really cool thing that, once again, we just did a pilot for one program, and I think it was very beneficial.
So we are going to want to follow up with some of these other questions and get those answered kind of at a different time, because unfortunately we're out of time. I will mention that Nichole is doing a roundtable discussion this afternoon on design review. So you're welcome to join that, and perhaps some of these items might come up. Lots of great questions. Yep, you can chat with her directly too by using the message option and clicking on her contact name. Awesome. And then I did post the survey link. If you want to copy and paste that into your browser, we'd appreciate your feedback. So we do want to make sure we get your questions answered. There were a lot of really detailed ones, and thanks for that. Okay, now this next session, just a quick note, 1020 with Darwin Peterson, Tools, Processes, and Governance, Manufacturing, Engineering at Spirit Aerosystems. The way you're going to do this, it's just a little bit different. You have one more click to do. When you click on the schedule for 1020, it's going to take you to an additional link. That one will take place in Zoom, so you can have camera on or off. But just so you know, before you click on to our next session at 1020 Eastern Time, that's what you're going to do. You have one extra link to click to join. All right, so we will see you in 4 minutes over there. Thanks so much, Nichole.
Thank you.